The Cobra Emperor.
Never! I won't allow it!
I just want to be sure to get this right. Story by you, written by you.
Yes.
Okay, created by you, inspired by you.
The creation points, you got to include Larry Hama because most of the characters came from Larry. I supplied the detail to Serpentor's origin, but that's the only thing that I created character-wise.
Is it okay if I say you wrote the damn thing?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I did. I most certainly did.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the very first cartoon commentary on Arise, Serpentor Arise, and I am so happy to have with me the guy who wrote the damn thing. It is Buzz Dixon. Thank you so much for being back on the channel.
Thank you for having me, Mike. It's always a pleasure.
And we are queued up on Arise, Serpentor Arise Part 1, courtesy of Hasbro. Head over to Hasbro's YouTube channel. All 5 parts are there. You can watch the episode on the Hasbro channel while you're listening to us here on my channel all week long. You can take part in the live chat as well. We are queued up at 0. I'm going to give you a countdown from 3. It's going to be 3, 2, 1, play. When I say play, you're pressing play. Everybody ready? 3, 2, 1, play. Yo, Joe.
Yeah, this was the flag, which was introduced, I think, in season 2. And we got copies. We had samples of all the toys so that we could see them and reference them when we were writing episodes. And the only space we had to set up the flag was on the conference table. So we had this 6-foot-long aircraft carrier set up at the conference table. And we would be having these meetings with, various people and whatnot. And you're leaning around this way and that, trying to talk around the aircraft carrier.
If only there was video footage of that.
Yeah.
Although that's hindsight, right? If there was only video footage of everything.
Yeah. Well, in the future, there will be video footage of everything.
So the creation of Serpentor, we talked about it a bit last time when we were talking about the most dangerous man in the world, not the world's most dangerous man. Happy I got that right after all this time. Let's talk again a little bit about the creation of Serpentor, which you played a large part in, and where that idea came from and how it all came together.
Well, I was the assistant story editor on season 1 of G.I. Joe, and Steve Gerber had brought me on board. Originally wanted me to be a technical advisor, and they said, well, we can't afford a technical advisor, but we can hire another writer. So I came on officially as a staff writer, but I was really kind of doing story editing, making sure everything had at least a patina of military, realism to it. And eventually I officially got assistant story editor status. The next season, Steve moved on and I was promoted to story editor. And what I wanted to do was a story about the origin of Cobra. And in my mind, there would have been a Frederick Nietzsche, Karl Marx, some kind of character like that who created the operating philosophy of Cobra. And Cobra Commander had badly corrupted this philosophy. And the original philosopher was, upset by that. And so Cobra Commander has him imprisoned so he can't tell the world that Cobra Commander's doing it wrong. The guy escapes prison. Cobra shuts down all worldwide operations to search for this guy. The Joes have no idea who he is or why he's important to Cobra. All they know is we got to track the guy down and find him first, because if he's that important, we want him. And when they catch him, they find he's a huge pain in the ass. And he finally escapes from the Joes, and the Joes go, you know what? Let him go. If he's out there causing trouble for Cobra, good. Yeah. So that was the pitch, and Hasbro liked it, and they said, do up an outline. I wrote up an outline for them, and they said, great, we love it. Just be sure to put the Cobra Emperor in. Said, Cobra who? And they said, the Cobra Emperor. And I said, well, who's the Cobra Emperor? He said, well, he's the leader of Cobra. And I said, no, he's not. We've spent an entire season telling people Cobra Commander is the commander-in-chief of Cobra. if you had told us, drop some hints, there might be somebody above him, we could have done that and then, introduce Cobra, Emperor later. We just can't drop him in out of nowhere. We got to explain where he comes from. So they said, you're right. Come up with a couple of ideas. Now, what I tell writers, young writers, is if you're ever in a situation like this and someone says, come up with a couple of ideas, don't. If they could come up with ideas, they would be doing it. They wouldn't be hiring you.
Right.
So I came up with two ideas, one of which became Arise, Serpentor, Arise. The other one became G.I. Joe, the movie, which is the one where there is a vast secret organization behind Cobra that's been secretly funding it. And now they're making their presence known because they're tired. Cobra Commander is screwed up too often, and they're just going to come in and get directly involved.
Yeah.
So I sent both ideas to Hasbro, and through Sunbow, of course. And I got a message back. They said, "Great, we love it. Do it." And I said, "Do which one?" And they said, "Both of them." So what we ended up doing was Arise, Serpentor, Arise became the
season 3 opener.
Season 3 opener. It became the miniseries that kicked it off. Cobra Law became incorporated into G.I. Joe, the movie. Now, in both cases, the screenplay, the written by credit, is by Ron Friedman. But that's because Ron had a really good agent, and animation writing is not covered by the Writers Guild of America. If it was covered by the Writers Guild of America, we would have had an arbitration and they would have decided what the writing credit would have been. Ron's really good agent got him a guarantee that he would get writing credit on any season opener and on any movie. And so he wrote the screenplay to the G.I. Joe movie. Hasbro decided they wanted to go in a new direction. They had me write the screenplay that eventually was filmed, but Ron, thanks to a very good agent, got his name on there. And I do not begrudge Ron this. Ron is a great writer. He's wonderful, very funny. He had a really good agent. I wish I had an agent half that good. But he has the writing credit, even though the actual work was done by yours truly.
So they introduce or tell you to introduce Serpentor, a larger-than-life character in a show that has had a lot of fairly larger-than-life characters, but no actual superheroes. Like Marvel, Serpentor is like a Marvel superhero. He's super powered. And then to balance things out, they give this guy to the Joe team. What was it like writing for the first real-life G.I. Joe Sergeant Slaughter?
First off, you got to remember at this time, he was like one of the superstars of
wrestling.
WWF. They called it at the time the WWF. And he's a major superstar. He had this ongoing series of epic matches with the Iron Sheik. And it was just tremendous stuff. And if you were a wrestling fan of that era, it was gold. I mean, he was just wonderful. And I draw a distinction between the Sarge, whom I love, and Bob Remus, whom I also love, because both are wonderful people. When he's the Sarge 100%. Okay. He really commits to the character. But when he's in Civies, he has got some of the wildest, funniest stories to tell you about, wrestling and all kinds of other stuff. Really great guy, wonderful guy. And if you ever have a chance at a convention, if anybody has a chance at a convention to drop by and say hi to the Sarge, do so. He's always a trip. It's tons of fun. And it's really, really wonderful. So I've heard nothing but good stories about Sergeant Slaughter, as well as his daughter, the Slaughter daughter, who has been doing some live streams as well. I've heard good things too. So
now I wanted to ask about Leatherneck and Wetsuit. In the previous seasons, the Joe team were a team, and they kind of left their previous military history behind them. Now that they are part of the Joe team, they certainly use their skills from before, like the Marines are, still Marines at heart, but they don't really go, Marines rule, and then the SEALs going, shut up, Jarhead, the SEALs rule. Whose idea was that to come up with a rivalry between a SEAL and a Marine? You, because you wrote the damn thing.
I had been in the Army for 6 years. That was why Steve wanted me to be a story editor and a technical advisor on the show. The original pilot for G.I. Joe, the original miniseries, Ron wrote a really good screenplay, but he took some liberties with reality. He had jets swooping down, cutting tanks in half with their wingtips. He had, by the way, for those watching, I described this as a helix. And I assumed the storyboard artists knew what a helix was. And if they didn't, they would look it up. It is not a Christmas tree. Okay. I know what a helix is. I know what DNA looks like.
We're setting the record straight here on Cartoon Commentary.
Yeah, I mean, really, And I'm glad we had a chance finally to give Dr. Mindbender something useful to do. Because he was usually just a secondary villain that you tossed in every once in a while to spice things up. But this time he really had something to work with. And I really enjoyed writing his scenes for this. Because
he's introduced in this episode. This is his first appearance. But then, he does kind of fall by the wayside later on.
Yeah,
but
he's tons of fun. I mean, he's another one of those characters you wish you could have used again and again, much more than you did.
It's tricky
anyway,
a couple years into the show to be introducing characters that still feel like year one characters. Sometimes you really start to stray from the original concept, but Mindbender is right up there with Major Blood and Destro and Cobra Commander.
You have to give credit to Larry Hama, because Larry Hama, while he was writing the comic book, was also doing the character bios on the backs of the cards. And the character bios you see on the backs of the card are about half or 1/3 the length of the actual bios that he wrote. They trimmed them down so they would fit on the card. And they would send the original bios to us. We had these notebooks that were about like yay thick. I'm not exaggerating, that thick. And they had all the Joe vehicles, all the Joe characters, all the Cobra vehicles and characters, and they had all of the biographies that Larry had written. So Larry gave us just tremendous material to work with. And Larry had been in the military, and he understood the military rivalry that goes on between the various services. I mean, they've got all kinds of jokes and snarky things they say about one another. The joke is that the Coast Guard, you have to be 6'4" to be in the Coast Guard. So that way, if your boat sinks, you can wade home. The Army and the Marines have long had a rivalry with one another. There's
the Sarge beating on some Marines, mainframe and Leatherneck. So definitely. Yeah.
So that's what we were trying to get across there. Get this, this super patriotic super soldier in. He is a superhero in his own right, you might say, because I mean he is definitely a couple of levels, a magnitude level higher in terms of military prowess than everybody else on the team.
Mm-hmm. His charisma in wrestling was off the charts, and it's just amazing to see how it actually translated in animation. It all comes through the voice.
Yeah. So here, fly on the wall here, literally. We got the material from Hasbro about what became Serpentor. Originally, he was Cobra Emperor, and then they changed his name briefly to King Cobra, and I kept my mouth shut when they did, because King Cobra is the name of a malt liquor, and there is nothing in the world I wanted more than to have a villain named after a malt liquor. But it took them about a week to find that out. And
Colt 45 was taken.
Yeah. And they... Mad Dog 2020 also was out of the pictures. They changed that in about a week's time. And the idea of combining all the various DNAs and making one big invincible leader, that to me made the most sense. If we could have only done one story, this would have been the story to do, because it's not as fanciful as the G.I. Joe the movie with its lost civilization and the monsters, which are tons of fun. But from what I understand, the official word is they are an alternate reality now in G.I. Joe continuity. They are not part of the main continuity.
I would call your Kindle Worlds book my canon, at least. That's my continuation.
That's what if they had stuck with just Arise, Serpentor, Arise, we could have still done The Most Dangerous Man in the World. Yeah. Because we would have still had a human origin for Cobra. But when they insisted on the lost civilization, then that went by the wayside.
I especially appreciated these episodes as a kid because they were educational. It wasn't just, fantastical, but educational as well, learning all about these ancient leaders, deoxyribonucleic acid. I really wowed my biology teacher when they asked, anyone know what DNA is? Well, that's deoxyribonucleic acid. And I was apparently the only guy who watched G.I. Joe in the room because they're like, where did you learn that? But how'd you come up? How did you pick the pieces of Serpentor, historical pieces?
Well, it was pretty simple. First off, you go through a list of all the great military leaders. You go through the ones that you know where they're buried, or you have some idea where they're buried. The cutoff was 1900. We decided that no military leaders after 1900 would be included because, for obvious reasons, we didn't want to have Adolf Hitler's genes.
Yeah. And I would also think so you don't get sued by any surviving family members.
That I don't think they would have a leg to stand on, at least not in the United States. I mean, if you're a public figure, you are in the public domain. People can make commentaries, they can make satires and parodies. But anyway, so we drew up this list. We found out either where they were buried or where they were suspected to be buried. We went through all the known sites, and we just started wrote episodes around that where Cobra is going after these various grave sites to try to get this DNA that they can then combine into one super leader. Let's see, I don't recall if we got to do this joke or not. I wrote it, and I can't recall if Hasbro had cold feet at the last minute and vetoed it. But for Napoleon, we were going to have them raid Napoleon's tomb. And if you know anything about Napoleon's tomb, Josephine is in an identical tomb right beside it. So they're side by side. And the idea was that Cobra comes in, there's gunfighting and everything. They come down, they pull the thing up, they look, oh, damn, it's Josephine. Clunk, the other one open,
That could have been his Achilles heel instead of the missing DNA and trying to get Sarge's DNA.
Could have been, yeah, it could have been. But, alternate reality.
Yeah.
So once we had that, then we had pretty much the story. At this point, the first thing the Joes are trying to do is figure out, well, what in the world is Cobra after? What are they looking for? What are they attacking? Why are they after this stuff? Then when they figure it out, they've got to go, well, who do they have next that they want to get? Let's get there before them. And if they can't get them, they have to thwart them in some way. And of course, in the very end, they managed to keep, I forget which one it was, but they managed to keep them from getting the last DNA that they needed. And in doing so, it creates Serpentor's Achilles heel, which is Serpentor is impetuous. He hasn't got patience. He will just blindly order something done without realizing what the repercussions or limitations are on it.
Yeah, he's one less than perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So that's
I love the idea of trying to replace that missing DNA with Sergeant Slaughter because, well, who's the greatest current soldier? I really appreciate the fact that they weren't successful, that there isn't a piece of Sarge in Serpentor. That would have really felt wrong with me. Like I like at least in this era, the heroes being true heroes, the villains being true villains, and no gray area where like a piece of me is in him. Yeah.
This was a fun scene to write where they're having the basically the bake off. Who wants to be a dreadnought? Yeah.
I love how Monkey Wrench wins.
Yeah.
But he's the perfect candidate. He cheats and he's smart. Mm-hmm. And he fits right into another 86 character that just goes right alongside the 84, I believe, original Dreadnoks.
Well, again, that is purely Larry Hama's work. He created a perfect whole, if you know what I mean. Not HOLE, but WHOLE. His world, his characters all function together really well. We never tried to follow his storylines, and he deliberately avoided paying attention to the cartoon show when it was on, because we both recognized we were working in different mediums for slightly different audiences, and it would damage both projects if we tried to sync them up. And we just recognized the comic book G.I. Joe is one iteration of the characters. The animated series is another iteration of the series of the characters. They're now doing a G.I. Joe Saturday morning comic book, which is basically based on the TV show, not on Larry's original comics, which is fine. I mean, it's like Batman 1966. Yeah. Good idea. You know, you've got more of the stuff you like, which is, you know, there's no reason everybody has to see exactly the same thing. And I have had a number of people ask me, could the most dangerous man in the world be part of that? And I've been telling them, I have had no direct contact with the new publisher, but by all means, if anybody wants to have a conversation with me about that, I'd be delighted to have the conversation. It is not an impossibility that the most dangerous man in the world could be adapted to their comic. So,
yeah, I was just about to ask that. Joe fans, listen to this. Put that out there. The Saturday morning comic that continues these cartoons. Who better to write it than the guy who wrote the damn thing? That could be your little tagline on your banner when you go to conventions.
I've got another, you know, one tagline is the guy who wrote your childhood, and the guy who wrote the damn thing goes right along with it.
I usually watch the swearing on this channel, but Dan was allowed in the cartoons sometimes, and I believe in you know, using it for emphasis.
Got away with some stuff that, I mean, you have to listen very carefully, and you realize what we were implying.
Poppycock? You think they'd get away with poppycock today? Boulder Dash?
I think we had one time Roadblock goes, man, you're cruising for a bruising, posing for a hosing, shucking for a, and then somebody interrupts him before he can finish. And another time, I think it was Lady J. It's the one where they're implanting nightmares in the Joes. And Lady J comes in, and she's had a sleepless night. She couldn't get through the night. And they said, well, what happened? She said, well, I was having these terrible nightmares. I was singing the national anthem at the Super Bowl. And they said, well, what's so frightening about that? And she says, let's just say I was out of uniform.
Yeah.
And, you know, you'll fill it in later when you get older, kids.
Yeah. Well, that's the first episode of Rise Serpentor Rise. We're getting a peek at the next episode, October Guard returning. Yeah. Action-packed episode. And Buzz, thank you so much for sitting and watching this with me, answering a couple of questions. This has honestly been one of the most fun things I've done since I started the damn channel, chatting with you, both the last time and this time about G.I. Joe. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me back on. I really appreciate it.
All right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this one and the rest of the week as well. Tune in tomorrow for the exciting continuation of Arise, Serpentor, Arise. Until then, Nerdmas Day and Yo Joe!
Yo Joe!